We'll call the Willmar City Council meeting to order for Monday, September 20th. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly. Osmus. Here. Butterfield. O'Brien.
Here.
Osk.
Here.
Davis. Plowman.
Here.
Nelson. Here. 6 present, 3 absent.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as it's been presented? In absence of hearing any, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next, we have consent items. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the city council minutes of September 7th, Willmar Municipal Utilities Commission minutes of September 13th, accounts payable report for August 27th through September 14th, application for exempt permit from Willmar Hockey Association, miscellaneous finance reports, a resolution declaring surplus equipment for sale at public auction, information on joint structure burn training with Pennock Fire, consider Willmar Warhawks rental and advertising lease agreements, a resolution for the fire department vehicle purchase, council's acceptance, a building report for the month of August, and the Board of Zoning Appeals minutes of August 12th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. I would request to pull item F in item I. On item number F, declaring surplus equipment for sale at public auction, in the past, we have had these public auctions, and I am wondering if the council would consider maybe going to one of these bidding firms, like K-Bid or Bid and Buy or Bid Now or one of those. The reason I bring that up is that when municipal utilities had surplus equipment that they had for sale out of the existing power plant, they used this type of a company, and their bids came in a lot higher. They received a lot more money for them, and it actually ended up costing a lot less staff time. A concern of ours that I have heard from staff, not in recent years, but in past years, is that it's pretty labor intensive. And I know last year at the conclusion of the auction, there was a number of items that were sold on the open forum on Facebook, Willmar Swap and Sell, for considerably higher than the person had paid for the items at the auction. And so I almost wonder if council would consider that as an option or looking into it. I had talked with the administrator about it, but again, the administrator's only been with us a short amount of time and didn't have time to do due diligence. So it may be something just for a discussion item, or it may be something that we want to consider asking staff to do in the future. So if council would like to have a discussion about that, that's the reason I'm pulling that item. I have no problem of having the public auction the way it's set. I just want council to be aware that there are other options out there, and something that may in fact bring us additional dollars. So if someone wants to have that conversation, we can. Otherwise, I'm fine with having that item approved. Councilmember Nelson.
Just a question, if the date on here is correct, is this already scheduled to take place on October 6th?
Yeah.
I would guess that we probably have an auctioneer or somebody already lined up this year, or what would we?
Yes, we have already put the advertisement out in the newspaper and sent out notices to a lot of the bidders that come every year to do this, and, you know, all our timelines are met. The auctioneer is already in place. So we would have to continue with the one this fall. I believe the mayor is suggesting checking the other options for next spring before we'd have a spring auction, unless I misunderstood his comments.
Would be up to the council to decide that.
Sure.
I'm not opposed to it.
I don't have any issue in looking at it for the future, but I would think that it's too late to try to do something with this one right now.
Okay, Councilman Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great idea. Anytime that we can streamline things, make them more efficient, also cost effective if there's a good benefit to the city, as well as, staff hours and whatnot. I see no reason. I think the auction should go ahead as planned if a bunch of plan and time and effort and energy has already been put into it. But then thereafter, if we like the idea, let's pursue maybe creating a hybrid auction system, look into those auction companies that streamline those things. I would be supportive of that.
Okay, my comments are similar to item number I. So the motion on the table is to approve all items. So that motion will stand. Additional comments? Councilmember Nelson.
Do we need a motion to instruct staff to do that next year so it doesn't get forgotten?
I don't
No?
think so, no.
No? Okay.
Motion been made and seconded. Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next, we have the open forum. Is there anyone from the public who is wishing to speak? There's no one that has signed up. With that, we'll go to the public hearings. The first public hearing is certifying unpaid weed grass charges to the county auditor for collection. I will open the public hearing and receive information from Ms. Thompson, our city clerk. Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, annually I bring to you any properties that have unpaid weed, grass mowing charges that they have, from mowing from last year of July through this year, the end of August. And this year we have 5 properties that have not complied, so it's my request that we approve these so I can certify them to the county auditor for their taxes payable in 2022.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak to the issue? Again, anybody from the public wishing to speak to the issue of unpaid weed, grass charges before they're certified? With that, I'll close the public hearing, bring it to the council. Council?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes as well. Next, I'll open a public hearing for the vacation of right-of-way, drainage, utility, and other easements in Willmar Industrial Park, 4th edition. With that, I will call on Ms. Swedberg for comments in regards to this item. I will open the public hearing at this time. Ms. Swedberg.
Thank you. Mayor, members of the council, this is the last action needed for the vacation of right-of-way, drainage, utility, and other easements in the industrial park for the logistics project. As we've talked about in the past, this project does not vacate the 69 kV electric line that runs north and south towards the west end of the property, but it would vacate the open ditch easement with the intention that that be replatted and a new easement be dedicated for the piping of that utility. The Planning Commission reviewed this on September 1st and recommends the vacation of easements. They made sure to catch the exemption of that 69 kV line easement in their language, which would be included in your final resolution in your packets this evening. And this would be contingent upon approval of all other items related to this project. So with that, it would be staff recommendation to adopt a resolution approving the vacation of right-of-way, drainage, utility, and other easements in blocks 2 and 3 of the Willmar Industrial Park 4th Edition plat.
I'll make that motion.
Is anybody here from the public wishing to make comment? Anybody here from the public wishing to make comment about the vacation of these right-of-way, drainage, utility, and other easements? In the absence of no public comments, I'll move it to the council table. Council, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to vacate the right-of-way, drainage, utility, and other easements in the Willmar Industrial Park 4th Edition. Council comments. Roll call.
Councilmember Osk,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes as well. Ms. Swedberg, you have done a yeoman's job on this project. You have done a lot of heavy lifting. You've had a job change in the middle of that, and you stayed with this project to conclusion. I want to thank you from the mayor's office for all your hard work. I know the council as well is very appreciative of the work you did. This was not an easy project to bring to the table and bring to conclusion, and so thank you very much for your work. We do appreciate it. Thank you much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Next, we have an introduction of an ordinance to rezone certain properties, industrial park property from government industrial to limited industry, and set a public hearing for October 4th. Ms. Swedberg.
All right, so the next item for this logistics project is an introduction of ordinance for the rezoning of the unplatted property related to the logistics project. So that's the western 6.3 acres. It's directly adjacent to the industrial park 4th edition, but all of the municipal owned property west of that platted area we left as zoned government institution to leave it up for future rezoning, though we intend it to be for industrial property. So this recommendation is to go ahead and set that public hearing to hear the rezoning for that land from government institution to limited industry so that the entire project site is zoned the same.
Motion to set public hearing for October 4th for the rezone of the unplatted industrial park property.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call. I'm
Councilmember-
sorry, simple motion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you again.
Yes, there's one other item on that car form. I know it's not listed on the agenda, but we're also looking for the plat, the major subdivision review and approval tonight. There are 5 or 6 conditions listed on your agenda, and I will just be forefront. The agenda gets published to the council before Planning Commission formally reviewed the final major subdivision. So they did add one additional condition that the development agreement be approved as an additional condition, though it is technically included in the condition that all applicable easements and approvals and agreements be approved. They wanted to make sure that that particular item was specifically called out. So Planning Commission reviewed and approved the major subdivision. This action takes all of the unplatted area, the vacation of the street, as well as that unplatted area, and turns it into one parcel, the Willmar Industrial 5th Edition, for this project site. And it would be staff recommendation to go ahead and approve this major subdivision with those conditions as listed in your packets.
Motion to approve, including the provisions set forth by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Next, we have consideration of Pattison parcel minor subdivision for construction of tidal wave auto spa. Coyote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. It's a privilege to finally stand before you today. The item before me is the Pattison parcel minor subdivision, and the property of interest is located at 519th Avenue Southeast, and the applicant is John LaPointe of Tampa, Florida. The Pattison parcel minor subdivision allows for the construction of tidal wave auto spa facility on the property described as northwest quarter of the southwest quarter located in section 23 T119 NR35W. Mr. Mayor, the Planning Commission on August 4 approved the preliminary part. And also on July 7, they addressed most issues during the plan review. As a proponent of sustainable development myself, I'm glad to see that even though the water that's going to be used will be supplied by the city, it's going to be a 2-inch water line. And according to an estimate from the MEP, it is going to be about 2.5 gallons per minute, which is about half the rate of a standard car wash due to the reclaimed tanks that they are going to be utilizing. Like I said, they have a water reclaim system that's going to be on site and has 4 tanks. One of those tanks is going to be an oil and water separator, and the other 3 tanks are going to be used for settlement. So customers can be rest assured that while they go recycling this water, there's not going to be any solids or contaminant that's going to affect the paint on their cars, when they're doing the reclaiming, the recycle system. With that, we recommend that the council approves their minor subdivision.
So the recommendation of staff is to approve the Patterson parcel minor subdivision for construction of tidal wave auto spa, and the recommendations of the planning commission. Council, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the Patterson parcel minor subdivision for the construction of tidal wave auto spa. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Looking at the drawing, is there only one entrance and exit off from 19th Avenue? There is nothing off from 5th Street, is that correct?
There's off of, so it's going to be accessed via 19th Street and 5th Street Southeast.
Okay, so there is another
There
entrance
is
on
another,
5th Street?
yeah.
Okay, I didn't see it in the drawing, that's why I was just concerned, because it's a busy area.
Right, I can provide you with, this was just a printout, I can provide you with the original plot submitted.
No, it's okay. If you
Okay.
say it's there. So I trust you. So
Thank you.
just seeking clarification because I only saw the one.
Okay.
Additional comments or questions? Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sounds like a great development in addition to this part of town where there's other recent developments. So that's a nice thing. Thank you. Just curious, has this gone before the planning commission already, or is that yet to come?
It has gone before the planning commission already. The plan review and the minor subdivision
And
has been
we're-
approved by the planning commission.
Okay, approval, any changes or no?
There was, it was approved based on some recommendations, and the applicants are, they're working closely with the engineering department. Most of those recommendations have been met, I would say.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Thank you, Coyote, for your presentation on this, and looks like a good project, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation of the 2020 audit finding. With that, I believe I'm going to Dave Early with Westberg and Ishins.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I just have a few things to go over to discuss the 2020 audit. The first item I have is the governance communication letter. There's just a couple things I want to point out on that. On the second page, under the Minnesota compliance section, the city does have employee recognition events once in a while. It's a recommendation that you actually have a policy that's written to basically lay out the parameters of what's allowable to do. And the state auditor, their basic position is that you just can't say, well, we're just going to have a party for the employees, and that's what you do. You should actually have a policy on what you do for those recognition events. One thing that kind of brought this up is that I know there were some gift cards purchased for the employees. I mean, it wasn't extravagant numbers or anything, but that's one of the items that you probably want to avoid doing just because it's considered compensation. It's like, it's not cash, but it is similar to cash. And so the reason for bringing this up is just to put in writing what you want to do for your employee recognition events, what's acceptable, how much you want to spend, and that sort of thing. And there is some guidance from the state auditor on preparing a plan for that. And so that's our recommendation, is to go ahead and do that so that everyone's on the same page as far as what you do with that. The other thing, electronic funds transfer, some of the bills are paid by electronic funds. You have a policy in place and so forth. The only thing on that is you just need to every year basically say who's responsible or who can do those. Obviously right now it's the finance director, that department that does those things. Every year you just need to basically confirm that and say that is the authority granted by you to that department to do that. So simple things on that.
Say, Dave, can I ask you a
Certainly.
question? So did you review the policy that the city has on employee recognition?
I didn't see a policy on that specifically, no.
Okay, so the council adopted a policy in regards to that a number of years ago. And so that there is a
Yeah,
policy.
I know this,
that's on that.
there was additional, I think it goes back to 2008 as far as when that was actually put into statute to allow that sort of thing. And so I did not see that policy.
So the city does have a policy on it. Ms. Valiant, maybe we can resurrect that and make sure that Mr. Early gets a copy of that policy. Thank you.
Simple enough. Yep. And then the other the issue that the one finding that we did issue with the audit related to the federal compliance. The documentation policies that you have related to procurement just needs some slight modification to fit into the federal requirements, because they do vary a little bit from your state requirements. And I know the finance department is working on that now. So in the testing we did, we didn't find that you were out of compliance as far as what you did. It's just a matter of you need to have documentation and written policies that match the requirements. And so that's the recommendation on that, is to do that. And like I said, the finance department has already kind of started doing some of that. So, in the future, because I mean, every year now you basically will be receiving federal funds that you need to be in compliance with. And so that'll just be a simple change to your existing policies that you have right now. So, any comments on that or questions? Then the other thing, I just have a few graphs just to kind of go over with you, just kind of give you a snapshot. So on the first graph that we have, we're looking at the general fund and the capital improvement fund balance. The red bar being the fund balance. As you can see, every year, you've been spending that down, and that's been by design. Your budget has been set up that way to spend that down. And so at the end of 2020, your fund balance in the general fund, you had about 65% of your 2021 expenditures covered. So that's still a pretty healthy fund balance. The general guidelines on that, if you get down 50 to 50 or 40 to 50% of your next year's expenditures, then you might be concerned on that. So I mean, overall, like I said, you've been planning on spending it down. You do have to look into the future in terms of reversing that trend. As your operating expenses go up, your fund balance also needs to increase at some point. So, but as it is right now, I think you're still in a very good spot. All right, and then the next page I have is just showing a little bit of detail what your fund balance for your general fund is made up of. Your committed balances, those are balances that you as a council establish and say that this is your intended use for that fund balance. And those can be changed by you also. So they're not restricted by outside parties, but they're just basically like an internal restriction. And it's a good policy to kind of do that. And I know you did pass resolutions on those balances, because in the past, that's been one item that we've talked about. So that's been corrected. I think that's the way you've done that now is great. The next graph, we're looking at the Community Investment Fund. As you can see, in 2019 and 2020, your fund balance has increased, and that's mainly been due to your bonds being paid off and excess money that was left over from those bond funds being transferred in. And so at the end of 2020, you had $10.9 million in that fund. And obviously, it's a very important fund for you. You know, you're using that to help pay future debt. So nice to see that the fund balance is increasing. The next page, we're looking at your outstanding bonds, and this does not include like the waste treatment bonds or the hospital bonds or anything. As you look at the ones that are maturing in 2021 through 2024, have very good fund balances. You're going to have excess funds in there, and so that money will end up going back to your community investment fund. And so, you know, as you can see, approximately $1 million over at this point in time. So as far as bond funds, they look great. The airport bond was paid off in 2020. You had $181,000 left in that. So that'll be available for other items as far as related to the airport. So no real issues on the bonds there. The waste treatment fund, the only thing that was a little unusual there is or unexpected, I should say, is your revenue is actually down for the year, obviously related to COVID and so forth. But operating income was still $5 million. You ended the year with $16.6 million in investments in cash, so you do have good balances there. One future item, your bond payments will be going up to about $7 million per year starting in 2025, and that's just because of how those bonds are amortized. But obviously, you've been accumulating excess that should not be an issue as far as paying those bonds at this point. So the waste treatment fund looks good. And then the investments, just looking at the maturities. In the past, we talked about having more of a balance in how they're laid out. You were heavily into the 6 to 10 about 5 years ago, and now you see everything's kind of flip-flopped. You have a lot of less than 1 year and in the 1 to 5 years. So the maturities are changed dramatically, just mainly because those investments were called early. And the main thing the reason you look at that sort of thing is you don't want to be caught where you have to cash in investments and experience a loss. So you want to be balanced as far as maturities. So no real issues on that side of things at this point either, I don't believe. So any comments or questions you have for me?
Any comments or questions from the council for Dave? Councilman Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just seeking clarity to circle back, and I think I know the answer already, but when comparing the general fund balance, our expenditures to the balances, that chart was basically just the ratio. The overall fund balance is steadily increasing.
The fund balance has been decreasing while your expenditures have been going up.
Okay.
Is what the deal is on that. So, and again, it's just a way to measure is how much do you have on hand for future expenses, and you don't want to be too low in the general fund, just mainly because of the timing of when you receive most of your funds, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Okay, Dave, thank you for your report. I know we receive that annually, and I do appreciate the conversation with you this year. And nice to see that tradition returning. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2020 audit findings from West Bergen Ishans.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? That motion does carry.
Mr. Mayor, if I could interrupt, we also have prepared a change in the procurement policy as recommended from the auditors. If you would want to take action to that tonight, you certainly could. Otherwise, we can put it on the next agenda.
It's up to the council what they wish to do. I don't have that listed on my list, so. Councilor?
We certainly can bring that back to the next council meeting.
Why don't we do that?
Let's bring it back to the next council meeting. Ms. Valiant, can we make sure that gets added? Thank you. Next, we have received testimony for liquor license violations. Ms. Thompson, we'll start with Applebee's.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at the last council meeting, I had indicated that the last alcohol compliance checks resulted in 4 violations of our various liquor licenses. We had a first violation for Applebee's, And the Barn Theater, we had second violation for American Legion and Foxhole Brew House. Our current policy is that first violations, the individuals need to appear at the council meeting. Second violations is a $1,000 fine or the option to appear before council. And we did receive $1,000 from Foxhole. So this evening for testimony, we have representatives from Applebee's, the Barn Theater, and the Legion to, address the council. So I would ask that we take those in that order as listed on your agendas.
Again, requesting testimony or requesting comments on Applebee's. Does staff have an introductory comment?
No, I basically kind of gave that, the two gentlemen here tonight representing Applebee's are Josh Dostal and Travis Carlson.
Correction, Adam Lesterberg. So Travis isn't with us.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
I guess we're up here to discuss the violation that we had. This was an employee that put their notice in. He was on his last week. We take our liquor license serious. Our training within the restaurant, they have to pass all of our training programs, responsible service of alcohol. They are not allowed to even have their own section or bartend without passing all of our training programs within the restaurant. With the employee that we had on the evening of this liquor sting, was terminated on the spot. That's Applebee's policy across the nation. So our employees are well aware of that we take it serious, and they won't be employed with us if they're serving minors or fail a liquor compliance check.
Okay. Have you partaken in the training that's offered by the Willmar Police Department for your staff?
I have not.
I don't believe so. We do our training within the restaurant. New hire employees as well as recertifying every year our staffs.
Chief, are we still offering that training?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we do. The first Wednesday of every month is offered for alcohol server training.
Okay. Were you guys aware of that?
No.
Okay. Okay, so we've heard the testimony. Council, what are your wishes here? Does council have any questions? Okay, thank you. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I don't have so much of a question, more so just a comment. It seems as though, at some point, there's an amount of inferred responsibility to the restaurant and to the organization, and I believe that's where the bulk of the higher level responsibility lays. And then there's always that element of responsibility that's on the individual. And it seems as though in this case, that corporate policy has addressed this subject in a serious and sensible way, and that it kind of fell upon the individual whom they recognized the problem immediately, and they dealt with it on their own. And this doesn't appear to be a reoccurring problem. So I guess in my opinion, it sounds as though they were already covering their bases as best as what they could from a pragmatic standpoint. But then also I assume moving forward, they intend to as well. I guess my question would be, for a first violation, then what would be, is there any further consequence, or is this the first violation more of a notification and a chance to address it, and maybe that educational piece, is that essentially why we're here? Okay.
It's a requirement in the ordinance that they have to appear before council or a council committee. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. It sounds like you have a plan internally, but I know in the past we have made a suggestion that you reach out to the police department, and it might even be a good way for you to strengthen the relationships with your servers and your people working there, to just have an understanding from what you're going through with the violation, because I know the servers don't want the violation either. And so I just wondered if you'd be willing to have a conversation with the police department if they do training, but how do you engage if you're doing it internally, if there's something that you can work with the police department when you do that on your annual compliance? So.
Yeah, we'd be open to that. And if there's a class that you guys have, is it where we bring 5 servers at a time in, or is it something where we could have somebody from the police department come in some morning or something, teach our staff or go through your...
Right, I guess what I would recommend is that, apart from this meeting, that you reach out to the chief.
Yep.
And, or tell the chief you want somebody to reach out, and they'll have somebody reach out to you and then, share with you, what is offered. But like Councilmember Nelson said, I mean, we don't want to be here. We don't want you guys here, and you guys don't want to be here, and your staff certainly don't want to be terminated. And so, all we can do to prevent those things from happening is what we want to do, so. But if you wish to have the chief reach out to you, I'm sure he'll have his staff reach out to you. Thank you. Next, we have the Barn Theater. Ms. Thompson.
Okay, with us this evening is Naomi Lindquist, and I do not have the gentleman's name.
Brian Stenholm.
Brian
Stenholm.
Denholm? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, or good evening, council. Just a little bit of background information on the violation. We did have, or predominantly all of our servers are volunteers. Before they can come do any type of alcohol training or alcohol serving, they do actually go through the Willmar Police Department's adult or responsible beverage training system. The individual that actually served that night did actually take the class about a couple months prior to get a refresher. And it's an unfortunate thing that he did serve it. We did correct it and have taken multiple steps since then. And I do have, if you guys, if I'm allowed to step up and just pass
Pat,
this around.
give it to the city clerk, please.
On here, it's just basically a little bit of what we do for the alcohol training. Like I said, we do go through the city police department, either having them come to the Barn Theater and provide the training to our staff or volunteers, but also we do go to the police department during their once-a-month trainings. But since then, we have taken a look as the board and looked at what other things that we can improve on, and just reasserting to the volunteers and also the staff that they do need to be doing the checks and basically flooding the area with reminders, and including even our house manager, whether it's a staff member, board member, or volunteer, to go inform the concessions people, these are the things that you need to be doing. And just a friendly reminder again and again, and we're putting up placards. We do actually have some photos of what we've done already, just as a reminding, just even furthermore, instead of just saying, yep, you got the training, just don't serve the minors. But it's one of the things we do take seriously. It was a one-off. I'm hoping that it'll never happen again, but the steps that we are doing is trying to reduce the percentage of this ever happening again. But with that, if the council does have any questions, concerns.
Council have any questions or comments? Councilmember O'Brien.
Did this, you said volunteer, right?
Yes,
They're
sir.
volunteers. Did they check IDs or they just pass that?
If basically we're going under the trainings that we were given, so if they do appear to be under 21, and my general rule is if you look under 50 years old, you're getting ID'd. I cover my bases. So we do ask for IDs if they do appear to be underage. I do not know why they didn't do it at that time, but then again, would I ask you in general for your ID if you came up and asked? No, because you appear to be well over that age. No offense.
You look old, Mike.
Hey, watch it.
But in general, where the board is actually looking at where we do have a sign up saying, get your IDs out on our plexiglass windows now, to where we are looking to the point where we're just going to be asking for IDs for everybody. just so we're not having to ever have to be, love talking to the council, just don't ever want to be up here doing this again. And I know like Casey's General Store does do that predominantly for a lot of their things. And so it's not necessarily a bad idea, and our board's exploring that as well. But we haven't taken action until this upcoming Monday meeting.
When you say IDs, are you talking driver's license? Is that what they're required?
Driver's license, Minnesota ID card, any form of identification that's acceptable. So if you have a passport, if you have a Wisconsin driver's license because you're from La Crosse, anything of those lines, and that is approved. If we can't verify that's a correct ID, we just refuse to serve.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I do recall we've done these in Public Works in years past, and I think it's already been said, but could probably be stated again. This isn't so much meant to be, and I hope it's not meant to be a shame session, more so just an educational piece, and it should be taken seriously because I think what we want to avoid, I mean, mistakes can happen, but repeated mistakes end up getting much more serious, and that's something to be taken seriously. So I appreciate the fact that that the barn took the time to write out their thoughts and to create and put their ideas on paper for how this is going to be corrected in the future. I think taking that step, in and of itself shows us that you take it seriously. So that speaks loudly, and so I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
Thank you.
Additional comments from council? Okay, thank you for being in front of us. And again, I just want to make sure you understand that the training is available. I know you said you are partaking in that training from the police department, so feel free to use that service and continue to do that. So
Definitely will, Mayor. Thank you very much for your time.
you bet. Bye now. Next one we have is American Legion Post 167. Ms. Thompson.
And our final testimony, as the mayor said, is from the American Legion Post. With us this evening is Dwayne Underthan and Vicki Smith.
Good evening to Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, support staff, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dwayne Underthan. I've been a lifelong member of the American Legion, presently serving as chairman of the board. This is Vicki Smith. She's the general manager of the American Legion here in Willmar. We work pretty close together in daily operations. We're here tonight because of an incident that happened, I think, in early May.
July 8th.
Okay, that's what it was. And because of the nature of the incident, we felt that it was our responsibility. I should say before this, we had got a letter from the city of Willmar informing us of a fine for a violation of $1,000. Because of the nature of this violation, Vicki and I felt as though it's our responsibility to the American Legion to come before the city council and make an appeal on this decision. Vicki will fill you in more on the details. She's involved in the daily operations.
The employee in question had not been through the alcohol server training. All of my employees have. They go as required every 2 years, I believe it is. Yes. She was said she was going to the August one. It just that happened to fall during a vacation week or whatever. It just didn't work for her. She did card him. She read it wrong. She questioned it. She had served him. Carded again. Took the drink back. It was all corrected before law enforcement entered the building. She was not cited. She did not get a ticket. I don't know, we card all the time. I just feel that the fine is unfair.
I have a couple questions. On this particular situation, my understanding is that there was a transaction that took place.
Yes.
A individual came in and asked for an alcoholic beverage.
Yes.
And then one of the staff members did receive the compensation for that beverage, and then the beverage was placed on or near the person. At that time, it was identified that someone secondary to the server identified the person as possibly being underage and told the original server to pull that remuneration or to refund them their money and then to pull the beverage back. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It was carded twice, basically.
So on this particular case, and I spoke with the chief and I spoke with the city attorney in regards to this. This is one of those cases where the council has to be the discerning factor. As Ms. Smith has stated, there was no citation issued by the courts or by the police department for this particular situation, although the transaction did happen. And so this is one of those situations where the council ends up being the deciding factor. The individual identified the fact that they had, the second server identified that a mistake had been made and attempted to correct the problem, although our police officers were in verbal communication and did verbally hear that the transaction took place. So the council has a decision to make as to whether or not they uphold the penalty of the $1,000 fine, because at the time it was felt that it was something that should get moved to a higher level. Normally what would happen is the citation would be issued to the server for making that transaction. In this case, it was thought that possibly, they identified the fact that they had made a mistake prior to the citation or the police officer coming up to, I'm not going to say what you said, that they weren't in the building yet. We're not going to argue about that if they were in the building or not.
Right.
But the police officer had not come up to the side of the person who was served and for that interaction, so that transaction had been basically canceled prior to the police officer coming to the side of the individual. So this is one where the council has a tough decision to make, in that this is a $1,000 fine. The other thing is, on this particular case, which makes it more troubling, is your last violation was in 2019. And so the subsequent expulsion of this finding then resets the clock on the liquor violations, which then puts the liquor violations back to what we'll call zero, basically. And Mr. Scott, if I'm incorrect on that, please correct me. So the way our ordinance is written is that if you have a violation, and this was hotly debated at the time that this ordinance was put into place. I believe I'm probably the only person Mr. Okins was there as well, but Mr. Okins and I were the only two sitting at the table when this was discussed. And it was a pretty vehement discussion amongst the council at the time. And so this is one of those that the council has a decision to make as to whether you uphold the findings in that a transaction took place, which I don't think is disputed. The issue is that the police officer had not issued a citation, and the police officer or the person who did the serving was not required to attend any court hearings in regards to it. So this is one of those really gray spots, and one of those that the council really needs to weigh in on. And I'll call on Mr. Scott for any clarifying comments to what I made.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. From my understanding of the situation, as well as review of the ordinance, I think the mayor's summary was was very good. Essentially what I understand to have happened, and before I get there, I guess I want to make clear the city code, like state law, is very simple. It prohibits a sale of any alcoholic beverage to someone who is not 21 years of age. So my understanding of the situation from Chief Felt is that in this case, a sale was made, but as the mayor explained, staff of the establishment essentially rescinded the sale before any enforcement action was taken. A violation of the city code would have several consequences. One would be it's a criminal misdemeanor offense. And my understanding is the department decided not to pursue the criminal sanction in this case, but it also subjects the establishment to a fine of $1,000, given that, and that's a minimum penalty of $1,000, given that this would be the second violation. It also provides the license holder the ability to appeal that fine to the city council, which they have done, and which is what we're doing now, is having the council resolve that appeal. I think this is a unique situation. I think, not to put Chief Felt on the spot, but perhaps there may be additional details he'd like the council to be aware of as far as the actual circumstances surrounding this compliance check. But the final point, the mayor's comment is correct that the clock essentially resets on an establishment that has had a violation after 3 years or 3 successful compliance checks, whichever occurs first. My understanding would be then if the council were to reverse this violation, it would essentially wipe the slate clean for this establishment. But again, I would invite any corrections from Chief Felt if I don't have that right.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The Willmar Police Department does conduct annual compliance checks. Our goal is to have 0 violations, and this is a unique case here. What our officers, what was testified to or what was said tonight is correct about the transaction. The police department, the biggest concern of ours is that if, hopefully it would be very unlikely, but if continued violations would happen on the next compliance check, that there wouldn't be the enforcement action wouldn't be able to be taken the same as it would tonight. I guess my recommendation would be that, if you would consider altering the penalty, I have no objections to that. I have no recommendations to that, but I would like to see the penalty be upheld so that if further violations happen, that it would be taken into account.
So normally the mayor doesn't weigh in on these things, and so I will have some comments, but I saw a couple hands come up, so I'm going to reserve my comments until those comments have been made. Calling Councilmember Osmus first.
Okay, just for a little background for the newer council members, I just want them to be aware that the ordinance has changed over the years. And it used to be much more severe. As far as the second or third violation, they would lose their liquor license for 3 to 5 days. And that's where one of our establishments that put on conferences, that got to be it becomes a financial penalty, not only for the business, but for the workers. And so, because if they couldn't do a wedding or they couldn't have a conference and be able to serve alcohol, the council discussed it and they decided that was too severe of a penalty. So they really lessened the penalties and went straight to the business being penalized to try to change the behavior more so than having to have all of the workers, whether that's the bartenders or the servers, having to take the brunt of not being able to do their job because the business didn't have a liquor license. And I just want to reiterate what Chief Felt said, is that, of course, we always hope that there's 0 violations on the compliance checks, but unfortunately, this transaction was made.
Councilmember Ross.
Ms. Smith, you indicated that the server in question had not been through the training at the time of the sale. Is that correct?
She was a new employee. She hadn't had a chance to get to one of them. So the next one available one was in August.
And she has completed that since?
She has, yep.
Okay. And do you remember the date of hire for that employee?
June, sometime in June.
All right. So she was under your employment for about a month prior to this sale?
Not quite.
Couple weeks?
Yep.
Okay. And she is allowed to sell alcohol even though she had not been through the training?
Correct. I usually give them 60 days to get through this training, yes.
Okay.
I believe that's the city of Willmar's recommendation too, within the 60 days of hire.
I believe that is the recommendation,
Yep.
correct?
Okay. Any other employees that are currently have not completed the training?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. So just seeking a legal clarification again. So the server was not charged. That's a personal charge, right? So the second side of the transaction becomes the establishment's side of it. So we chose not to do that because of how the transaction was taken back. But so just wanted to clarify that there's 2 legal sides to what went on in in the process, correct?
Councilmember Nelson, members of the council, that is correct. There's 2 sides to this. One would be criminally, an actual criminal misdemeanor charge.
Yep.
Prosecuting that. The department elected not to press that charge and pursue the criminal avenue. So we're now in the civil enforcement realm, where for a second violation, the minimum sanction would be, under the city code, a $1,000 fine, unless the city council were to determine that under the circumstances they wish to overturn that violation and not uphold it.
So my second part of the question is, if we did not overturn it, do we have the right to say, because of the circumstances of this, to say only charge $500 for this one, which permits the second violation to still stay in place if there would be a third one, but to recognize that this was an unusual situation?
No, that's an excellent question. And actually, as I read the ordinance, this is a minimum fine. So if the council upholds the violation, the minimum sanction would be a $1,000 fine.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Councilmember O'Brien, followed by Plowman.
When a business is charged, is it normally the employee is also charged at the same time?
Typically, that is the case, that the employee that actually did the serving is issued a misdemeanor criminal citation for that, and then also information is turned over to the city clerk for the civil portion of it.
Okay. Curious, why wasn't the employee charged?
It had been the guidance from our city criminal attorney that does the prosecutions that in a case similar to this, that did not feel that it met the threshold. For a criminal conviction, it takes a higher standard to convict someone criminally than in a civil action.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question and then a comment. A question first would be either through our administrator or back to our police chief. What was the recommendation of the police department specifically?
I believe the recommendation of the police department was to leave it up to the council.
Okay. Well, then I guess that makes us the arbitrators of legal here. I really don't think it's our place to be playing judge, jury, and executioner, but in this sort of instance, we're kind of forced to. Given the evidence before us, if we are gonna play judge and jury, I believe that if the police department did not find sufficient grounds to charge a crime, then I have a hard time finding those grounds as well.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to clarify with Chief Belt. I thought I heard him say that he wanted this violation to stay in place so that the time frame didn't trigger and et cetera. So I just want seeking clarification with the recommendation, just in general with the process that we have.
Councilmember Nelson and members of the council, that is correct. The main concern is not so much a dollar fine going to the American Legion. Again, we want to work with the businesses and make them successful and be compliant. The fear that I have is that there was a violation in 2019. This is I feel fits the definition of another violation. My fear is that if this is not upheld, the slate is wiped clean. If they have a violation, say next year, or if we have another compliance check this year, then it would be another warning by the council, and there's no bite to it.
Councilman Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then just to seek legal clarification, can we leave that violation in place and remove the fine associated with it?
Councilmember Plowman, members of the council, I don't actually believe you can do that. I think if you were to uphold the violation, the ordinance essentially mandates a minimum of a $1,000 fine. I think, I don't mean to suggest anything to the council in this case, given that the ordinance places the council in the role of deciding the appeal. One observation I would make would be that in the event the council were to not uphold the violation, Chief Felt's analysis is correct. That would reset the clock. However, the ordinance does provide flexibility to the council in the unfortunate event this establishment were to come before you again in the near future for a new violation. The city council does have the ability to establish a greater penalty where circumstances warrant it.
Councilmember Ross.
So I've heard a couple of times, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've heard a couple of times that this is the minimum penalty. Since I'm still relatively new, what's our history in the past? Has there been higher fines issued to businesses on their second violation?
So, Mr. Scott, do you want to handle that, or?
I can take a first stab at it, and anyone who has a better memory or a longer memory than me can supplement my answer. I am not remembering circumstances where the city council had heard a second or subsequent violation and decided that the ordinance penalty was insufficient. The ordinance gives the city council that authority. And in any case, if for whatever reason, the circumstances of the violation are egregious, or if multiple violations happened in one compliance check, or any other circumstances that the council thinks, warrant a stiffer sanction, anytime there's a violation like this, the council does have the authority to either increase the monetary penalty or seek to suspend the license for a period of time, or even if it's egregious enough, seek to revoke the establishment's liquor license. So there's a sort of, I would call it a default schedule of penalties for each violation before the violations are wiped clean by the passage of time, where you've got a $1,000 fine for your second violation, a $2,000 fine for the third, $3,000 for the fourth, and then fifth and subsequent violations, I think, contemplate something like a suspension or a revocation. But again, that's a sort of default schedule. The council can always, it's a minimum. The council, I don't think, has authority to go below those numbers if it upholds a violation. But it always has the ability, if it feels the circumstances warrant it, to impose something harsher.
And another follow-up clarification, Mr. Scott. The ordinance indicates if a sale is made, is that correct?
That is correct. It's a very straightforward ordinance that prohibits the sale of alcohol to an individual who is not 21 years of age. And I guess my analysis would be based on what I have understand to have occurred would be that a sale was made, but then that sale was rescinded before intervention by the police department.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, if we rescind this tonight, could part of our motion to rescind this be that if there is a violation within the next whatever period of time still keeps that compliance, that we could automatically go to a third violation or something like that?
To be clear, I think the action item for the council tonight is simply uphold the violation or overturn the violation. My suggestion was that if you find yourself dealing with this establishment again in the near future on what would under the ordinance be considered a first violation, the council at that time could make a finding to justify imposing a greater sanction than simply requiring the establishment to come attend a council meeting and explain what happened.
So basically, that's what I was trying to ask the question, if we could accomplish that, but put it in writing so that if it's, they're on record and we're on record that, if it happens again, I'm sorry, we're back to where we were. So, but you're saying no?
I'm saying that doesn't need to be and probably shouldn't be part of your action tonight. But certainly it would be on the table at the next, hopefully we never get to that point, but it would be on the table for the council if you are in that situation again soon.
Councilmember Osmus, followed by Plowman.
Okay. I think the bottom line is nobody wants to be the bad guy on this. And whether it's because the Legion does great things and you hate to have to see them penalized, but a lot of this discussion happened in 2019 with the last violation. Now, unfortunately, they had an employee that was there short term that had been there maybe a month. And then it's up to, if she had not been able to go to the training, then it's up to the business to at least have a discussion with this person about serving. And even the state has tried to make it very easy to not have somebody underage purchase, whether that's the red part around the picture and in the training, the messages, red is dead. Do not serve somebody with the red square around their picture. They've turned the direction of the license so it's clear. So it isn't that a server calculates in their head wrong. We can all see how that could happen. But unfortunately, the server did the transaction. That's it. It's black and white. The transaction was made, and then somebody else in the business thought that it might be a compliance check that was taking place, and this person was underage, and they tried to reverse it. It doesn't take the transaction back if the server hadn't been brought to their attention. Would it ever been? Would anything have been said? We don't know. We don't know. But it happened. Unfortunately, it comes before us to have to make the hard decision, and that's what we're here to do.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just the comments going through my mind, this isn't really, this penalty isn't something I really want to do. The only thing is we have to follow what we've set forth in our guidelines, in our city charter, in our ordinances. We have to, and that doesn't say, if I understood Mr. Scott correctly, that does not say if a citation is issued. It says if a sale occurs. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Then unfortunately, I also agree that it's that makes it black and white. And if we wish to change that, then it's incumbent on us to change that, but we can't go back in the past. So we ought to apply our ordinances and codes as they are written.
Councilmember Osk.
Mr. Mayor, would you accept a motion at this time?
I would.
I will move to uphold the violation.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded to uphold the violation. I'm going to make a few comments at this point. I'm probably, with the exception of Mr. Olkins, the only one around for remembering why this ordinance was put in place. Ms. Osmus was on the police department along with Chief Felt as well. But I don't recall that either of you were at the meetings where this was deliberated. There have been times, as Councilmember Osmus stated, where there were businesses that lost their ability to function and uphold their business responsibilities, and that's why it was changed. This came to us simply because there was a particular business that had multiple violations, and there was no teeth in it, other than suspending the license. And the council then wanted to have more teeth in it. And so the deliberation that you all have made this evening is the deliberation we should be having. It should be the conversations we're having, it should be the discussion we're having, and then the conclusion should be drawn from that. So with that, I commend the council on your deliberation. I commend the council on what you have done. And this is the heavy work, this is the hard work, but this is the work that's our responsibility. So I know you take this responsibility seriously. And with that, I will ask if there's any additional comments. With that, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. The violation is upheld. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for hearing us.
Thank you for your decision, your conversation, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Next, we have consideration of approval of Willmar Pedestrian Bike Route System. Mr. Manzer, our interim Public Works Director.
I'm standing in for Rob tonight. It's Rob's home ill, so I'll, before you will be consideration of to approval of the Willmar Pedestrian and Bike Route System for the City of Willmar. And I'd like to turn this over to Chris Riddell, who has put extensive work in this. He's part of the Willmar Bike Groups, and they've put a lot of time into it and a lot of energy, and he can explain it best. Chris?
Mr. Riddell.
Thank you, Mr. Manzer. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'm very happy to be here today to present the featured bike route on behalf of the Willmar Bikes Advocacy Group. Let me bring this up before I forget. Here we go. So currently, what I have available for everyone to see is the current bike route and pedestrian route in the city of Willmar. You can see that there are two colors, green and blue. The blue indicate trails that are off the road, so they are actually bike trails separated from the road. And all the green routes are street-approved biking paths or routes on the roads. When I came back to Willmar in 2020, I took a look at this map, and even though there's a lot of infrastructure here, it was a little confusing when I initially saw it. It's hard to know kind of where to go, and unless you have it kind of memorized, it's also a little difficult because there's not particularly clear signage on most of these routes. And so last year in 2020, I communicated with some of the leaders of the Willmar Bikes group and talked to them about creating a featured route system. And that is what you see in front of you here. This is 10 colored routes, each of which will have a symbol and a name that the city, the citizens of Willmar, tourists can all come in and easily access the bike infrastructure in the city of Willmar. One important aspect in this map that I'd like to explain is that the 10 featured routes uses roughly 80 to 85% of the infrastructure already in place from the city of Willmar. And in addition to that, it hits some really key points in the community, including the YMCA, many of the schools in the area, the Glacial Lakes Trailhead, Robbins Island, and of course, all of the hubs of the bike share program, those white bikes that are used and owned by the city that allow citizens or anyone to use and rent them for $1 an hour. So with all that being said, Willmar Bikes, along with Public Works and other community input, we've created these routes and we're looking for approval for them. The final slide that I'd like to show you today, I'll get back to that in just a second. This slide right here shows the items and the cost. So I communicated with MR Signs, I believe out of Fergus Falls, and they gave us some information regarding the pricing for all the individual items. And so I guess maybe I should kind of show you what exactly we're talking about. So this is an example of one of the routes that we would like to create. This would be, if you look on the screen, this would be the Brown Turkey route. And so this is 2.5 miles. And this was set up by the county transportation. Thank you for doing that. But what we would have is a symbol like a turkey, a wayfinding sign telling the person where they would go. And instead of having a bike here, we would instead put a mileage marker so that people know how long they have gone on that route. This particular route would be 2.5 miles. And currently, we have gotten funding from SHIP to complete 2 of these routes alongside getting a standardized bike sign for the entire city of Willmar. So I'll show you that with this. I've been in communication with Mel Odens at the county. He has suggested that we purchase these signs, these big green signs, for all of our routes in order to standardize all the routes and the signage in the city of Willmar, because we do have multiple different biking signs in the city. And so with that, we would bring attention not only to bikers on where they're supposed to bike, but also for drivers on where they expect bikers to be. And this would be the red cardinal route on that as well. So, with all that being said, the cost of this project is estimated to be $10,525.88. This pricing has gone up a little bit in the recent months due to the increased price of metal, but we have gotten funding from SHIP, roughly $2,817.08 for the first part of this project, which would be to complete the brown turkey route and the green Norway pine route. The final thing I'd like to say is that if you look at the on the top of the items or where they're named, we tried our best to keep all of the names either Willmar or Minnesota centric. So that means the brown turkey, the green Norway is the state tree, the yellow stinger route, the orange fox route, the gray duck route, one of my favorite, the purple people eater route, although would be a little nicer if they would have won yesterday. The red cardinal route, the blue ox route, the pink lady slipper route. I think that's pretty much all I have. I just want to give a special shout out and thanks to the county, to Public Works, and finally to the leadership of the Willmar Bikes group, because we've all been doing so much work for this, and I really appreciate everything they've done. With that, I can take any questions you might have.
Okay, the recommendation from staff is to adopt a resolution to approve the Willmar pedestrian and bike route system for the city of Willmar. And so if the council wishes to wishes to make that motion, we can, or if you want to have discussion, we can have that as well.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Plowman, followed by Osk, followed by Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here and presenting this, as well as your hard work. We know that biking is more than just purely fun. For some people, that's their primary means of transportation. That's how people get around and recreate and stay healthy, but it's also how people commute. And we also know that things like proper signage and properly designated and created bike paths are actually much safer. So there's actually people's lives at risk because it's more than just a feel-good thing. So I am supportive in going ahead with this, but I'm going to take the opportunity to grill you for a question. And,
excellent.
Yeah. So my only concern, I guess, representing my constituency, and because I've kind of lived there my entire life, but County Road 5 has awesome paths on both sides, and that would be our brown turkey route. The area that was always of concern for me was there's a large volume of people that commute back and forth for work there, and there's also a lot of people fitness and recreating and whatnot. But I mean, there's people that take that route daily. By foot or wheel, whatever, for work. And the crossing at Old Highway 12 was always a concern for me. And I always got lots of questions. What's the city going to do to make that a more safe crossing? Now, the intersection has changed. It's moved south and we have the roundabout. And I see that, the infrastructure is there within the roundabout, but in between the roundabout and just north of the railroad tracks. I guess that section is a section that still concerns me because there's a large volume of people that then move on to County Road 5, and there's a heavy volume of traffic on County Road 5. Has the committee, has the group addressed this? I'm sure they have, but have there been any thoughts, suggestions, ideas, discussions with the county over a potential solution to this bottleneck?
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Plowman. This is a very difficult situation because the county has communicated that there isn't a real option for extending the road or making a separate path for bikers specifically. What Mel Odens has communicated to me is that they have tried to, in the reconstruction of 12, they have tried to extend the east side of that road so that the expectation is if you're traveling southbound on 12, you'll still have to go on that road, but you'll have a little bit of a wider shoulder where you can cross the railroad tracks. And if you're on the east side of 12, you're going to naturally go into the south biking infrastructure once you're past that intersection. But we have communicated a lot about that, and Willmar Bikes is aware of these issues, but sometimes we don't have the financing or there's just not the means to make some of those changes.
May I follow up? Okay, thank you for that. And yeah, if I can, I'm just going to advocate one more time. If it requires restriping or if it requires, I believe the room is there. I believe the width is there because I drive that route multiple times a day. But the reason I'm being so persnickety about this is that if somebody were to be hit by a vehicle or killed, this gets serious really, really fast. And so that's something that that I've always said, if and when the time to discuss it comes up, then it should be discussed. And it seems as though that conversation is pertinent now. So, like I said, I'll voice my happiness with this plan. It looks almost like a subway chart. It's kind of cool. I'm supportive of the whole plan, but I got to advocate that Highway 12 section just for the citizens and for safety.
Well, I can talk to Mel or Mr. Odens about that and see if there's any maneuverability to make that wider or make that safer for bikers around that area.
Thank you very much for hearing me out on that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Osk, followed by Nelson.
I just wanted to voice my excitement for this. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you for raising awareness to the existing trails that are out there and for putting some pretty neat signage together. Two questions, one of which just kind of wondering, so we're hopefully get 2 done, any, timeline for when the rest would be completed?
So we should have these 2 routes completed by the end of the year, by December of 2021. Public Works has said that that is doable. When communicating with some other, about other routes, we feel confident, and this is with Public Works communication, we feel confident that we can get roughly half of them done by the summer of next year. So that would be 5 out of the 10 completed, alongside of, we haven't been promised, but we have said if we continue with this project that we could also get SHIP funding with that as well. So that means that much of this could be paid for. So with all that being said, I am confident if we have the funding available, we should be able to get this done within 3 years.
Great, thank you. Also, I was noticing that the dark green doesn't seem to have a name, and that's the one closest to my house. So if you think about naming it after someone, I mean.
We'll put that into consideration.
Thank you,
Councilmember Ross.
I think it's Osk Parkway.
Yeah,
Councilmember
sure.
Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank you, Chris, for bringing this tonight. And I've worked with the Willmar Bikes Group since we went the first time around to get our bike-friendly designation. And so it's a great group, and they've worked hard. There's a lot of different players at the table, and you've taken this and moved it forward, and I'm appreciative for that. But I want to speak to, we're all here singing the praises, but we need engineering on board, and we need Public Works on board. And SHIP has been generous to us previously with signage, and Public Works gets the task of installing them. And we've had to hustle a few times to meet the SHIP grant requirements to get that done. And so it does require, if we make this commitment tonight to do this, that we follow it up with commitment of some staff time to get the signs up and to figure out a plan to work with that, to honor the dedication and the things that we've worked with. And as we do our comprehensive plan, looking at different places to bike routes and those types of things, I think it's a awareness for the council that they become just as important as some of the streets and the signage that needs to be done. And so I just wanted to speak in favor of this and to say thank you to Willmar Bikes and to you, Chris, for your dedication. We've got lots of people at the table, and it's a fun group. Also, Mel Odens, I have to say thank you to him. He works hard, lets the groups know if there are funds available or, to work with the county. They have a plan that they're working with, and he's been good enough to help us with that too. And so I speak in favor of this, but also want to speak in favor that if we commit to this, we're committing to the resources to do it. So I'll quit with that. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions from council? Councilmember Osmus.
I just wanted to say that I was fortunate enough to get the full presentation at the Park and Rec meeting earlier this summer. And what country did you?
So I actually lived in China for 7 years, and this was based off the Beijing subway system, because when I traveled there, at first I didn't speak the language, and when you have colors, you obviously don't need to speak the language to know where you're going.
And so I thought that was fascinating, and I know that you've literally put in hundreds of hours to design this, to present it, and to make it happen, what's happened so far. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you from the citizens, because this is, I'm a visual person, so I like the colors. I like to easily be able to see where to go and how many miles I'm biking.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Or walking. I just want to
Yes.
let everyone know that this is also for pedestrians as well.
Mayor, can I make?
Councilmember Nelson.
I just have to put my Convention and Visitors Bureau hat on too, because Beth Fisher is at the table, and they do bike maps, and they have given some money to put up signs, et cetera. And so there is a good network of people working on this.
That's
And
right.
so this brings it forward and helps us to do that. And tourism is our second largest industry. So I'm thankful that we're getting this done and finding a way to take the next steps to keep going. So thank you.
And if I may, I would just reiterate that Councilmember Nelson is absolutely correct, that even though I'm presenting here, there were a lot of people behind the scenes that helped get this thing going where it is today. So thank you to all, really the leadership of Willmar Bikes for putting so much time and energy into all of this.
Councilman Rasmus.
I just think with all of the work that we put into all of our parks and everything that's going in to truly attract people out to the city, I think we should try to get this done as soon as possible. And I would make the motion to fund the whole thing for the $10,525.88.
So you're making an amendment to the motion to add the entire funding of the project.
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion to the amendment. Councilmember Nelson.
It's great that you want to do that. I do think that there is funds out there for us to utilize too. So I would like to see us use those SHIP resources and work through some of that before we spend our money, because I think we have other things to spend money on to subsidize this. So I'm in supportive of putting a timeline on there, but I respect if that's the request.
Additional comments or questions to the amendment? All in favor of the amendments signify by saying aye. Councilmember Rasmus.
Can I make a friendly amendment to the amendment to say that we fund it fully with the SHIP funding that might be available?
Or you could just direct staff to find alternate financing.
Or the staff finds alternate financing.
I'm agreeable to that.
So there's a friendly amendment to the motion to fund the project of having staff work with resources to find the funding, but that the underlying motion is to complete the project as quickly as possible. Additional comments to the amendment? All in favor? Is this a roll call because we're spending money that's not budgeted? I believe it is, right?
Yeah, let's do roll call.
Roll call?
Councilmember Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Ask.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. The original motion on the table is to approve, accept the resolution to approve the Willmar pedestrian and bike route system, and that motion has been made and seconded for a resolution. Additional comments to the original motion? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Ask.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Chris, on behalf of the mayor's office, I also want to thank you for your work. I remember when this concept was originally a brainstorm of Andrew Beer, when he put that original plan together, which I know that Willmar Bikes worked really hard on expanding. But Councilmember Nelson and I were at the mayor's bike ride last Friday night. And there were 2 people there that were expressing concern about not having bike routes because they had been hit by bikes. And so this is a great step forward. So thank you for your work. We really do appreciate it. So keep up the good work.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Next, we have consideration of a professional services contract with Marcus Construction. Ms. Valiant.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Tonight, I've got in front of you the resolution to consider entering into professional services contract with Marcus Construction, not to exceed $15,000. And this is to have Marcus Construction doing consulting work on the projected projects for the Glacial Lakes, Glacial Ridge Curling Center and the Civic Center roof renovation, which are the 2 major projects that are potentially the roof center for one will be coming up for sure this next year with the event center coming up. And Then also, this also answers to any engineering questions that the Glacial Ridge Curling Club will be having as they move forward with their project as far as engineering and design and that. I have Jim Bach here tonight also, if you have any questions for him as to what's going on out there. It's a big project.
I just have a question. Would this include the potential of the outdoor ice in consideration of doing some draft work around that as well? Or is that not included in this project?
I think that would come also, would that include, because Bob didn't include that in here.
If I may.
Yep.
Mr. Bach.
Mr. Mayor and Council, really what is bringing this on is with all of the projects that we're in the heat of the battle with right now, we're starting to get asked a lot of questions. Our staff is doing a lot of work over and above the local option sales tax projects, and we're trying to keep things separate. They're not the same project, and we're not trying to tie everything in. And so our thought and certainly, in seeing what's going on, seeing the needs of the staff for, constructability questions, estimating questions, those types of things, we want to be available to the city for whatever projects come down the pipe. Ms. Valiant had mentioned a couple of them that were out there. We're dealing with projects out at the Civic Center already, so we're very familiar with what's going on. Questions about the utilities for the curling club are starting to come in line, and so this really is just our way of really trying to get our arms around this and answer the questions that your staff is presenting to us, and we want to be able to provide them.
Okay. So I think the long answer to the question is that it would include the space for the outdoor rink too?
Right. The proposal has been presented as a blanket services, professional services. So, your staff will determine the needs that they would have for Marcus Construction. And I might point out, the rates in our proposal are the same rates that we proposed 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we first submitted for the local option sales tax, services in the first place. So nothing has changed as far as our rates are concerned.
Hey, Council, what are your wishes?
I would make a motion adopting the resolution entering into a contract with Marcus Construction for these professional services related to future city projects associated with the Invest in Willmar projects in the amount not to exceed $15,000.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Mr. Bach is right on. I think that we have to make sure that there's a clear delineation in what we have and have not hired Marcus's to do. I think they're given a large task and they're very, very capable. They're very organized and they've done a fantastic job thus far, but I think it's all the more important then to ensure continuity moving into the future with these projects. And as these projects expand and as we start to talk about new projects as they are related, there needs to be that clear delineation. I think that's only fair to them, but I also think it's a matter of efficiency as well, because they know the projects, and as these projects continue to grow and change and evolve and move towards eventuality, they have the best applied knowledge out of anybody on these projects as it pertains to future projects. So that's throwing a little kudos Marcus's way, and thank you for your work thus far. I am supportive with moving forward with this action.
Additional comments? Roll call.
Councilmember Osmus?
Aye.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Osk?
Aye.
Plowman?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Next is a Mr. Bach.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Mayor
work.
and Council.
We're hearing good things, and keep up the good work. And I had a question this morning at coffee, and they said, how come we have that big piece of concrete out there by Marley Lake? And I said, that's going to be your new area to play football. So anyway, waiting
on the turf, and when the turf gets here, it's going to be just wow. going to be a great wow factor out there. So it's coming real soon.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a resolution ordering preparation of the 2022 improvement report. Jared, I'm sorry, Mr. Volge.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The item in your packet this evening is ultimately the first step in the assessment process that the city undertakes for recouping some of the funds associated with construction projects around the city. So as the mayor stated, there is a resolution in your packet this evening. By way of just a short overview, the streets currently contemplated for improvement are identified in the memo this evening. And the feasibility report or the preliminary engineering report will ultimately identify costs associated with those improvements, at which time the final recommendation for which improvements proceed will be provided. In addition to that, I wanted to make council aware of a couple parking lots that are being considered for improvement. Those aren't necessarily related to the assessment process. However, they will be discussed as part of that consideration for the overall budget and street improvement program for 2022. So with that, there's a resolution in your packet this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
What are your wishes?
Motion to adopt the resolution ordering the improvement report for 2022 street and utility improvements.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember O'Brien.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Jared, I think you've got your marching orders.
Thank you.
Go forth and do good work. Appreciate it. Next, we have consideration approving a job offer for the Planning and Development Services Director, Ms. Valiant.
Thank you. I am going to defer this to our Human Resource Director, Luann Sitzma.
Ms. Sitzma?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Good evening to you. I just wanted to remind you that we have an opening for the Director of Planning and Development, and we've been in the process of doing interviews, and we have 2 very good candidates, and so what we're trying to do now is get the offer made. So I just need your approval of that this evening.
Lisa, I think talking with Ms. Valiant earlier today, the recommendation is to be able to make a job offer within the parameters of the posted job description and within the benefit package within that job description.
That's correct.
And I think that's the request. So, council, what are your wishes?
Make a motion to consider hiring a planning and development director.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Councilmember Nelson.
Hi, just seeking clarification. It's my understanding we will have an opportunity to find out who this person is prior to the person accepting the job?
The job, well, we can't give them a job offer until we have this piece passed.
Correct, and I guess I just expressing a concern that I want to be supportive of what we're doing, but
Well,
I think.
the council still has to approve the hiring of that person.
Thank
because he's
you.
a department
That's what
head.
I'm asking for.
So you will know that person and have to approve that hiring. So, yes, we'll make the job offer and see if they approve it. And then, of course, it would be pending a council approval.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions?
I'd just say I had the privilege to work with our HR director and our administrator on this with seeing 2 great candidates. And that was really interesting and exciting time, I think, for us. And we'll have a choice to make. But I think either way we go, we're going to be a win-win.
Yep.
Welcome.
What we've done here is we've kind of added a step in the process when we formally adopted the process that Mr. Gramitz brought forward of having a council member sit on the interview process. So before we used to be able to streamline this, and they used to be able to make that job offer, and then it would come to the council with the name attached to the packet, and we would then be approving that person. But by adding that additional step, Now we have to come to the council to get the approval, because the additional step was added. And then, in the past, we saw the name, we saw what had been the negotiated dollar amount and all of that. But by changing that Mr. Gramitz did, and the council approved, and we did, so it wasn't Mr. Gramitz, it was the council that did it. We now have another step in the process which delays us out. And so, we need to get this person on board as quickly as possible. Had we not had that new step in the process, you would have had a name tonight. You'd have said, here's the person we're recommending, but because we added that step in the process, we have another piece that we have to do. So, I don't know who the names are. I don't know who the candidates are. I think the only one here is our staff and Mr. O'Brien, who served on the interview committee. So that's what we have to do. So it's another step in the process. It delays it. It makes it much longer. It makes it much more cumbersome. It kind of ties the hands of staff a little bit, but that's the process that we established. So with that, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Thank you very much, and now you have permission to go make a job offer. So, something that I hope that had been done a week ago, but I understand that we tied your hands, so we're sorry for that, or I'm sorry for that. Next, we have the presentation of the mayor's 2022 budget. And this will be a three-pronged process where I will make some opening comments in regards to the budget. I will then call on our finance director for Mr. Okens to make some comments. And then Mr. Okens will hand it off to Ms. Valiant as our city administrator to make some additional comments, and then I will close it up and I will facilitate the discussion if the council wishes to have any discussion. As mayor of the city of Willmar, the charter requires the mayor to submit to the council the budget for ensuing financial. Okay, I'm stumbling here a little bit. Let's start this over again. As mayor of the city of Willmar, the charter requires the mayor to submit to the council a budget for the following fiscal year, describing any proposed financial policy changes, reasons for these changes, and summarize the city's debt position along with all other information requested by the council. Again, that statement is a requirement of the charter, and some council members have taken me to task, so that's why I'm reading that statement at the beginning of this meeting. The 2022 budget I am proposing addresses the city's mission statement of providing responsible municipal service in an open, effective, and efficient manner to all citizens while achieving Willmar's community values. The 2022 budget includes the general fund, special revenue fund, debt service fund, enterprise funds, and a 5-year capital improvement plan that was approved by charter or per charter by the Planning Commission. The city's debt position at year end of 2020 was $114 million, which included Rice Memorial Hospital's debt of $34.8 million. Beginning of 2021, the Rice Memorial Hospital debt was retired, leaving a balance of $79.2 million of city debt. I am also proposing two major financial policy changes. The first is to finance street debt over 15 years instead of the current 10-year policy. The second is to finance debt service for City Hall and additional street improvement expenses. The general fund, the city's 2022 increased tax capacity, will fund the general operating fund with no operational changes. We'll add no staff, we'll add no programs, and all of that will be covered under the tax capacity. I am also proposing no operational changes to the wastewater treatment plant or special revenue funds. The American Recovery Program, the city will receive approximately $2.1 million in American Recovery funds. Staff has compiled the list of eligible American Recovery projects and potential city projects. I am requesting the council allow the mayor to continue working with staff on the list of eligible projects presented and encourage council to submit their projects to staff as well. That was handed out at the beginning of the meeting to council members, and so council members, you all have a copy of what we are recommending for consideration. As mentioned earlier, the city's debt service has been reduced by the retiring of the Rice Memorial Hospital's $34.8 million, and street improvements will continue to be a priority in the 2022 budget. Tonight, I'm presenting to you a balanced budget with this caveat. I have included $2.165 million available for capital improvements and vehicle replacement. I am requesting that the council work through the $4.3 million of capital improvement and vehicle requests with staff to maintain a balanced budget of $2.165 million for capital expenditures. So the long answer to that statement is that staff is requesting $4.3 million. Ms. Valiant presented to you a process to score the capital projects, and some of you did that, not all of you, but that formula will be presented to you. Mr. Oakens will make that available to everybody, so you'll see those numbers. And then understanding that I have $2.165 million in the budget, but in the total capital, there's $4.3 million. And so the council will have to whittle that number down and make those recommendations. For the 2022 budget, I'm proposing a $5 million increase to the tax rate dedicated for additional street debt service and for city hall debt service. The general fund operational needs will be funded by the city's net tax capacity with no increase in the levy for the general fund operation. The only increase to the budget will be in the form of a $5 million tax rate increase for debt service for streets and city hall. The proposed 2021 city tax rate will increase from this year, which is 40.841, will then increase to 45.841 on the increase for the city portion only. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Oakens, our finance director, for some comments on the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As mentioned and discussed earlier, when the council adopted the 2022 budget calendar, the process by state law is that the council adopt a preliminary tax levy that needs to be certified to the county auditor by September 30th. So the action tonight is that only, and that would be adopting a preliminary levy as the mayor stated, and included in your packet in the resolution. That process, again, is required by state law that a preliminary levy be certified by September 30th. The total operating budget, the process for the budget calendar that the council had previously adopted will take that budget that will be inserted into the city's website and to Dropbox as far as accessibility to the city council for all the recommended funds with the detailed information as far as general ledgers, proposed revenues and expenditures after tonight's meeting. Discussed when we looked at the preliminary budget, the state legislature was proposing a change in the truth in taxation requirements. That did not pass legislation, so the Minnesota Property Taxpayer Day will not be a requirement this year. The county auditor will be sending out a truth in taxation hearing. For the city of Willmar, our hearing will be on December 6th, which is the first council meeting in December. And so the council from tonight until December 6th will be able to have this item on your council agenda for discussion and review. And so December 6th will be the final adoption of any recommended budget. So the action tonight again is only for the adoption of the preliminary levy as proposed by the mayor. He mentioned the tax capacity increase. We had a 6.9% increase in our tax capacity, which was a little over $1 million, which will allow an increase in the amount available for the general operating. And so none of the increase will apply to that, as the mayor stated. The only increase in the 5 mils for the tax rate will be applied for additional street debt and the city hall debt, as the mayor had presented. With that, I believe Administrator Valiant has a discussion as far as the sales tax, some information on the sales tax portion.
Thank you, Mr. Oakins. And let's see if I can find it. Let's see if we can get this correctly. No, can't. I can't get it right. Don't do this enough, that's why. Okay.
If you want to go down
I'm
to the
willing for
bottom,
help if anybody wants to help
if
me.
you want to go down to the bottom of the screen, I think. There you go.
Okay. So tonight we wanted to update you on the local option sales tax and the Invest in Willmar, where that is at and how that has, or how that will affect our budget in the future also. So we're going to go back a little bit and discuss what has happened with our money over this past year. Currently, we had allocated $3 million to Robbins Island, and that included the one open shelter number 1. And this is the previous look of it, the layout of it, construction views that are going on out there right now. The shelters that are out there are about 60 to 75% complete. This is open shelter number 2. And this is what it will look like as completion moves forward with it. This is the location of shelter number 2, the Gurry shelter. And as you know, that was to some remodeling in there, and progress has been being made in there also. And the Hilltop shelter and the view of the Hilltop shelter, and construction that's been going on out there. And then this is where it is right now. This is what the final will look like. That was the $3 million, and like I said, it's about 65 to 75% complete, and we do expect that will be done by the end of October. The Swanson Fields was a $2 million project, and that was the orange field here in the middle, and to the top, or to the bottom right, is the blue field. And they were to create a grandstand for the orange field along with some probably field restoration. The blue field was to for field restoration and new dugouts and scoreboards. And it's little views of the construction that's going on out there. The pilings for the grandstand, and the field reconstruction going on. This is a view of what the field grandstand will look like, and what it looks like when you're sitting in the grandstand. This is the blue field, the dugouts on each side, and then we're at the recreation fields, where this is one of the biggest projects that is going on out at the Civic Center. And this is the creation of softball and baseball complex, and this would be in front of the Civic Center. 4 baseball fields, softball fields in front, along with concession stands also in the middle there. And we have some pictures of the construction that's going on out there. They moved a lot of dirt and such out there, and for drainage. You can see this is the construction going on for the concession stand right now. As Mr. Bach mentioned, the recreation turf fields are going on also. These are on the back side of the Civic Center, so between the Civic Center and the high school, there will be 2 synthetic fields out there, one 93,000 square feet, the other 90,000 square feet. And you probably have, this is a view from the school side, and this is a view of the construction of the fields going on at this time. And as you can see, there's one is already waiting for turf on the right-hand side. Then we come to our largest project, which is the Events and Recreation Center. It's a $10 million project, and it is going to be built alongside the blue line. The entrance to the Civic Center currently will be being changed. So right now they're going to, where the original Civic Center doors were, they're going back there. New project will have a new entryway here, along with the Recreation Event Center in the front, basketball courts, lockers, playroom, and such, and concession stands. All of these projects here were funded through bonding this last year. They we're happy to say that our local option sales tax numbers have been coming in very, very well now. They look like we are going to be able to match all of our local option sales tax with our bonding needs. And that means that in the future also the $2 million for the community center is there for funding also, along with $700,000 or $7 million for stormwater management in the future. It will be the council's decision in the future here if we will be bonding for that. Currently, the city does have the $2 million. If they would like to set that aside for reserves for the community center, that is something that the council will be able to decide during our budget process also. I would say in the next 11 to 12 years, our bonding dollars for these projects that I just showed you is approximately close to $2 million a year, and we will be having that funding coming in. It's very favorable. So we believe that as long as our sales stay up the way they are in the past year, we will be doing very well. Anything else regarding, can I answer any questions about the budgeting process or the budget that Mayor Calvin presented?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, one item that I forgot to mention is, again, the council is asked to adopt the preliminary levy tonight. According to law, is that once the levy is certified or agreed upon tonight, it can be lowered but cannot be increased moving forward at the December meeting.
Okay, so the budget in front of you has a preliminary levy of $7,313,672. And so that would be the motion that would need to be made if you want to set the preliminary levy. And again, as was stated, you can lower that number, but you can't increase that number. Again, I wanted to keep all of the operating costs incorporated in the monies that are coming in through our taxes, and so I did not adjust anything with that at all. Again, you will have noticed that we do have increased dollars going into our street reconstruction program with the plan that is being presented to you with the increase in the mill rate. If you choose to stay with that plan, as the mayor is recommending, that then would increase in approximately, Mr. Oakins helped me, it was about $8 million in street reconstruction costs.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the $4 million that is in the capital improvement that the council's already seen, and then that the additional 2 mills that you're proposing would generate enough to do another $4 million. So a total of 8. So
So that moves that again. consistent with the majority of the budgets I've presented to you, shows an increase in street reconstruction and street improvement costs. In all the years that I've presented budgets to you, I have increased the street improvement dollars with the exception of 1 year. But otherwise, every other year, other than that, there's been an increase in the street reconstruction dollars. So with that, I would stand for any questions. Councilmember Nelson.
Just seeking clarification, if I understood correctly, you were talking about going from 10 years to 15 years?
Right.
What does that do to our bonding or how do we do that?
Well, we would have to send that out to our bond council, but we do not believe that it would be a negative impact based on what we've seen with the bonds that we've sold recently for the local option sales tax. They're both revenue producing bonds, and so from what I was told by staff is you might see a small uptick, but the advantage to that is that by spreading that cost out over 15 years rather than 10 years, the fact of our street reconstruction costs continue to grow, and if we're looking at about $7,000 assessment to a property owner, instead of dividing that out over the 10 years, it would now be divided out over 15 years, which would then flatten that curve and would decrease the amount of money that was required by a constituent to pay on an annual basis for their street reconstruction cost. So spreading that cost out.
It would keep our debt on the books longer, so our debt
Another
would
5
be
years.
higher, correct?
Correct.
If we do this every year.
Yes, but you also have call dates that would be, so if you're bonding, if your assessments have come in early, if people have paid their special assessments early, you would have the option then at the date of the call date to pay that bond off early. So you could potentially be paying it off in 12 years
Okay.
instead of 15.
I was just trying to compare it to the comments that were made from our auditor to, and just the knowledge of the past with how we have funded streets and what's available, so.
Right.
Will this work with the utilities to be able for the utilities to keep up with the street reconstructions or street repairs, or are we going to triage like we had talked about and
No, we
catch
will
up
be
on
working
some
with the
things?
utilities to make sure that our streets that are going to be repaired are probably the first ones that need to have water repair first.
Then just seeking clarification of the tax increase in kind of layman's language of what we're doing tonight, or what's being proposed. The tax increase amount.
What we're proposing tonight is an increase of 5 mills, and that 5 mills would go, 2 mills would be obligated towards street debt, and the other 3 mills would be obligated to the city hall debt.
Okay, and I think I saw that figure is similar to where we were between 450 and 500,000 a year, correct?
Yes, and that's all relative depending on the interest rates at the time that you go out bonding for the debt. Because this is not being bonded, we're just preparing for that. So we would have it built into the budget so that if we want to bond next year, we will have that in the budget already.
So the question that has come up consistently on the City Hall project is where is the money going to come from? And so I'm addressing that question. I addressed it in 2017. That budget wasn't followed. And so this is now, again, putting another opportunity for the council to say, we do wish to proceed with this. This is the funding source that we can use. If the council chooses not to do that, you certainly have that option. The council is the one that adopts the final budget. The budget I'm presenting to you has funding for additional streets and funding for City Hall. Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that was one of the things that I was seeking clarification on, the 2 mil increase that is in addition to current street spending?
Correct.
Okay, and then if I may comment on that, I think it seems as though that's becoming a centralized theme of what we're trying to do here. And I think that's spot on in talking to business owners and community members and people that have reached out to me that that don't typically reach out to me, people that have typically remained silent when it comes to city governance issues and whatnot. I've heard an awful lot from an awful lot of people regarding our street improvement program. So I believe after hearing all that, I've done a lot of research regarding road construction, street construction, the state of construction in America, as well as the economics behind it. And I think, unfortunately, the money is the sticking point, but it's also why I believe it needs to be addressed in very serious manner as quickly as possible, because we could be repaying, in just a matter of a few short years, we could be repaying, small dollars with big dollars really, really fast. So I do believe that although it is a lot of money, it's prudent for us as a city and municipality to spend as much as we can on our infrastructure now, because it's only going to get more expensive. And that is something that our citizens will not tolerate, us kicking the can down the road much longer. So I'll be supportive in that nature. I think that as we've seen in the budgeting process in years past, we sometimes get down in the weeds a little bit further on in the process, but I think as a starting point, I think this is a decent starting point, and I think this is a good spot to start our discussion, again, because I think it addresses that main issue of city infrastructure that is very important to people. So thank you for all involved and for presenting it, and look forward to moving on with this process.
Additional comments or questions? So a motion would be in order to set the preliminary levy at $7,313,672.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osk.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
That motion passes.
Thank you, council.
Thank you, Ms. Valiant and Mr. Oakens, for your work on the budget, and your staff for helping you prepare that and getting that done. I do appreciate that. Next, we have community pride announcements. Are there any community pride announcements from council? Councilmember O'Brien.
I'd just like to thank our city did just a magnificent job on the flags of honor. Just unbelievable. I heard such great reports about the job you guys did, and I hear it all the time. I mean, every day, over and over and over again, thanking the city for all that work in Public Works. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments? Councilmember Osk.
I just want to say thank you, too, for those involved with the Touch a Truck Day. It made me a really popular dad at my house, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that.
Perfect. Appreciate that. I just want to make the council aware of a conversation that I had with a constituent this morning. The constituent was concerned that the council did not ask staff to lower the flags when the 13 Marines were killed. What staff does is they follow the state law, state statute on that, and when we're notified by the Secretary of State, then we do lower our flags. So it was no disrespect meant for our veterans or for our military folks, but just know that if you see something like that in the future and you see that a flag's down, up, and maybe it should be down, make a call to one of the council members or call City Hall and just say, hey, would you consider lowering your flag because of this event? And I think that our staff wants to do the right thing. It's just sometimes we don't know about it or don't hear about it. And it was no disrespect. I apologize on behalf of the mayor's office for that having not happened. But just if there's an event that you would like the flags lowered for, please contact our city staff, and our city staff will be very accommodating to that. With that, the council all received an eligible American Rescues project. Here's the list, so make sure and review that prior to when we get back together. And then just remember, the retreat is set for October 8th and 9th. And so we look forward to everybody being there. We're still trying to find a location. Everyone's
Council, please respond to Ms. Glasser also. She's missing some interview time, so she would like to speak to everybody. So please get your interview times to her.
okay. Anything else for the council? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.